Have you ever wondered why happiness seems so elusive? Why some people seem completely unbothered by criticism, while others live in constant fear of being judged? What if the reason behind your struggles, your anxiety, and your dissatisfaction with life could all be traced back to a single cause? According to the book The Courage to be Disliked, co-written by Japanese philosopher and psychologist Ichiro Kishimi and author Fumitake Koga, every problem in life stems from one simple fact. You care too much about what others think of you. This concern for external approval, they argue, is the root of unhappiness. It shapes the way you think, the way you behave, and even the way you see yourself. But what if you could free yourself from this invisible chain? What if the only thing standing between you and true happiness was the courage to be disliked? In this episode, we'll break down the key teachings from The Courage to be Disliked, including the psychology of unhappiness and why we seek approval, why external validation is a trap that leads to misery, how to live a truly fulfilling life without the burden of other people's opinion. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why caring too much about approval is a losing game, and how letting go of that need can lead to freedom, confidence, and a deeper sense of purpose. Kishimi and Koga make a bold claim. No problem in life is purely internal. Every struggle, every insecurity, every fear, it all stems from the outside world. They explain that there is no such thing as a worry that exists in isolation. So-called internal struggles are always linked to the presence and expectations of others. If you strip away other people's opinions, judgments, and reactions, what remains? For example, imagine someone who feels anxious about public speaking. They may believe their fear is an internal issue, a personal weakness. But where does that fear actually come from? It isn't the act of speaking itself that causes anxiety. It's the fear of judgment, the possibility of embarrassment, the worry about how others will react. In another case, consider a person who feels pressure to succeed in their career. If we remove societal expectations, parental approval, and the comparison to peers, would the pressure still exist? Or is it entirely built upon the fear of disappointing others? Kishimi and Koga argue that because all problems are interpersonal, the only way to solve them is by reshaping our relationship with others. And at the core of this transformation lies one simple but difficult truth. You must have the courage to be disliked. Imagine a life where you are completely free to be yourself, where you make decisions without worrying about what others will think. Sounds liberating, right? But here's the catch. True freedom comes with a price, and that price is the willingness to be disliked. Kishimi and Koga argue that fear of disapproval holds people back more than any external limitation. Most people don't lack the ability to be happy. They lack the courage to disappoint, the courage to be judged, the courage to be disliked. They explain that those who are truly free do not fear criticism. They don't allow the opinions of others to dictate their actions, and they certainly don't waste their lives trying to please everyone. Consider the case of an artist who chooses to pursue an unconventional career path. Many will criticize their choices, calling them unrealistic or irresponsible. But if they abandon their passion to seek approval, they trade their freedom for the temporary comfort of validation. On the other hand, if they stay true to themselves, they may face criticism, but they will also gain something far more valuable: the ability to live life on their own terms. In essence, the authors argue that happiness is not about being liked, it is about being free. In the next section, we'll explore the foundations of this idea by looking at the psychological theories that inspired this book. What if happiness has nothing to do with your past, but everything to do with the present choices you make? The ideas in The Courage to be Disliked are heavily influenced by the theories of psychologist Alfred Adler. Unlike Sigmund Freud, who believed that the past determines our present, Adler argued that people are not shaped by their history, but by the goals they set for themselves. In other words, your life is not controlled by past events, but by the meaning you give those events and the direction you choose moving forward. To understand this concept, Let's take two people who faced childhood neglect. One of them believes their difficult upbringing means they are doomed to struggle forever. They feel like a victim, blaming their past for every failure. The other person, however, sees their past as a challenge to overcome. Instead of feeling trapped, they use their experiences as motivation to build a better life. Same past, different future. Why? Because one person decided to define their life by their past, while the other decided to create their own meaning. Kishimi and Koga expand on this idea by emphasizing that personality is not fixed. They argue that your thoughts, habits, and emotions form a lifestyle that you chose at some point. And even though it may feel like this lifestyle is just who you are, it's actually something you are actively choosing every day. For example, imagine someone who considers themselves shy. They might believe that their introversion is an inescapable part of their personality. But Adler's theory suggests that their shyness is actually a choice, a way they have learned to interact with the world. They avoid social situations not because they are inherently incapable, but because they have subconsciously decided that staying quiet is safer. This perspective is both liberating and challenging. It means that you are not bound by the past, but it also means that you are responsible for your own happiness. So if happiness is a choice, why do so many people choose unhappiness? Kishimi and Koga argue that unhappiness is not always an accident. Sometimes people choose unhappiness, consciously or unconsciously, because it serves a purpose. At first, this might sound strange. Why would anyone choose to be unhappy? But when you dig deeper, the answer becomes clear. Let's take an example. Imagine a student who constantly complains about how much they hate studying. They say they want to do well, but every time they sit down to work, they feel overwhelmed and give up. Now from the outside, it looks like they are struggling with motivation. But according to Kishimi and Koga, there's something deeper happening. The student's real goal is not to succeed, it's to avoid failure. If they never study, they can tell themselves, I failed because I didn't try, instead of facing the scarier possibility, I tried my best and I still wasn't good enough. Fear of failure is often disguised as laziness, self-doubt, or procrastination, and this applies to every area of life. Someone who avoids relationships may secretly fear rejection. Someone who refuses to take risks may be afraid of embarrassment. Someone who constantly complains about their situation may actually be using unhappiness as an excuse to avoid change. This is why the authors argue that people don't want to be happy, they want to be comfortable, even if that comfort comes at the cost of their own fulfillment. But if happiness is a choice, how can we break free from this cycle? The answer lies in changing the goal we set for our relationships with others. The most common mistake people make when interacting with others is seeking approval. Kishimi and Koga argue that unhappy people believe their worth is determined by how much others like them. They crave validation, believing that if they are seen as good, successful, or admirable, they will finally be happy. But here's the problem: approval is always conditional. Think about it. People approve of you for different reasons. Some may like you for your sense of humor, others for your achievements, and others for your generosity. But these standards are impossible to maintain perfectly. What happens if you stop being funny? What if you fail at something? What if your generosity is taken for granted? Since approval is based on conditions, it can always be taken away. And if your happiness depends on approval, you will always live in fear of losing it. Now let's consider the opposite scenario. What if instead of seeking approval, you focused on being useful? Kishimi and Koga argue that happy people don't chase approval, they find fulfillment in helping others. But this isn't about self-sacrifice. The authors make it clear, helping others should not be about obligation or social pressure. It should be something you do because it makes you happy. For example, imagine a doctor who saves lives but feels no passion for their work. Despite their success, they are miserable because they pursued medicine for prestige, not purpose. Now imagine an artist who isn't famous but finds deep joy in creating. Even if they aren't widely recognized, they feel fulfilled because they love what they do. The key is that true happiness comes from internal fulfillment, not external validation. Kashimi and Koga explain that when you contribute to others, not for approval, but because you genuinely enjoy it, you no longer need recognition. You already feel valuable. This is the secret to freedom. When you stop chasing approval, you stop fearing disapproval. This doesn't mean you should ignore everyone's opinions or be reckless. It simply means that your worth is not determined by others. Now you might be wondering, what if people misunderstand me? What if I do my best and they still dislike me? The truth is, that's okay, because the final lesson of this book is that the most important thing in life is not being liked, it's having the courage to be disliked. At the end of the day, no matter what you do, someone will disapprove. You could be the kindest person in the world, and someone will still find a reason to criticize you. You could try to be perfect, and someone will still judge you. So if being liked is impossible to guarantee, why waste your life trying? Kashimi and Koga argue that the only way to live with true freedom is to stop trying to be universally accepted. Instead, focus on living according to your own values. If you live a life that feels meaningful to you, then whether others approve or not doesn't matter. So ask yourself, are you making decisions based on your own happiness or the fear of judgment? Are you living for yourself or for the approval of others? And most importantly, do you have the courage to be disliked? Because in the end, that courage is what separates those who live freely from those who live in fear. And when you finally embrace that truth, you'll unlock the one thing you've been searching for all along: happiness. If caring about others' opinions makes us unhappy, why do we do it in the first place? Why does the fear of rejection feel so deeply ingrained in us? To answer this, we have to go back thousands of years to a time when human survival depended on belonging to a group. In early human societies, being accepted by the tribe wasn't just a preference, it was a matter of life and death. If you were rejected, cast out, or disliked by the group, you faced the very real possibility of starvation, danger, or even death. This evolutionary wiring still exists today. The modern world may no longer require tribal survival, but our brains haven't fully caught up. We still experience social rejection as a threat, even though our physical safety is no longer at risk. This is why a harsh comment from a stranger can feel disproportionately painful. Being left out of a social event can cause anxiety. Public criticism can trigger a strong emotional reaction. Even though our survival no longer depends on approval, our subconscious mind still treats social rejection as a serious threat. But here's the key realization. While this fear may be hardwired, it is no longer relevant. In today's world, disapproval won't kill you. Disapproval is merely discomfort, not danger. Understanding this distinction is the first step toward breaking free. So how do we rewire our minds to stop fearing rejection? Most people view rejection as a failure, but what if rejection was actually a sign that you're doing something right? Think about it. If no one ever disagrees with you, that means you are always conforming. It means you are never taking risks, never expressing unique thoughts, and never challenging the status quo. History's greatest thinkers, leaders, and innovators were often disliked in their time. Socrates was sentenced to death for his ideas. Galileo was condemned for challenging the church's view of the universe. Van Gogh died in poverty, rejected by the art world. Yet today, their ideas, discoveries, and contributions are celebrated. If they had feared rejection more than they valued their purpose, they would have conformed, and the world would have been worse off because of it. The lesson? If you're never disliked, you're probably not standing for anything. So instead of fearing disapproval, start seeing it as evidence that you are living authentically. At the end of your life, what will matter more? The number of people who approved of you, or the life you actually lived? Most people spend their entire existence trying to fit in, but the people who make the biggest impact, the happiest, most fulfilled individuals, are those who dared to be different. Kashimi and Koga's message is clear. Happiness is not found in approval. Happiness is found in meaning. And meaning can only be achieved when you have the courage to be disliked. So ask yourself, are you living a life true to yourself, or are you still trapped in the invisible prison of others' expectations? Because in the end, there is no greater tragedy than a life lived for the approval of others, and there is no greater freedom than finally letting that go. Imagine waking up tomorrow with zero fear of judgment. Imagine saying what you truly think, doing what you truly love, and living exactly how you want without a single worry about what others think. That life is possible, and the first step toward it? Stop trying to be liked. Start focusing on what matters, and above all, have the courage to be disliked.